and welcome to the fun. Okay. Thank you for joining us. I hope you guys are having yourself a good day and things are going up your alley. Okay, so we're in week 13. We got like 2 more weeks left of school per se. We want to make the most of it. Okay. So next class, it's kind of a question and answer period where I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular class, but I'm probably going to leave like 10, 15 minutes on the structure and we'll talk a little bit about what they are. And also, I'm going to be looking at the different parameters and deciding on how to go about giving you time, even in class, to encourage you guys to complete the work and at least get the work on time. Okay. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of business. We're going to look about how structuring organization works and what you can do to better yourself, and even more so, identify the different levels of management and the responsibility of each of those levels together. Okay. So what I want to talk about today is identify the three levels of management and understand how company structure. Okay. So you're going to be working in a company, there's going to be a structure, and there's different types of structures. Sometimes we look at a structure like a pyramid, okay, like the Great Pyramids of Egypt, where you have different structures going in and understanding a little bit about how structurization works in a company. And then, of course, we are going to talk about how the three levels of structures are going to be dealt with, identify the three levels of management and the responsibility at each of the levels altogether. We're going to be discussing a bit of the options for companies and organizations and businesses, how they create an organizational chart so that you know exactly how many managers you need, how many people will report to each manager as well, and make sure that they understand the whole business concept, and eventually explaining how specialization helps organizations hopefully make more effectiveness, more more ideas of making more efficiency and discussing the different ways that an organization can hopefully what we call departmentalize. Okay, so that you know exactly how many people you need. Okay, has anybody ever gone to a construction company or construction site and saw that one person was doing the job, everybody else was looking at them? Does that ever happen to you? And maybe you're in a huge jam of traffic, and then you see all of a sudden people working on something, and you realize that these individuals are they're not doing much because there's not a lot of organizational charts that they use, okay, identifying levels of management and responding to each one. So this is where our class makes a lot more sense. So we're going to explain other major terms related to the chapter and talk a little bit about how to delegate a work to individual people, how many people you need, how many people you don't need, and of course, who controls the company at the end of the day, okay? So more or less, guys, structure is nothing new. Everything is structured in life. Okay, think about it like how you organize your day-to-day operations, and the same thing is in work as well. So a lot of times, allocation of resources, people, equipment, money. And ways to achieve company objective is all about organizing. Okay, a lot of times when you open up a new department or your goal is that you want to expand your work, there is a cost to it. Okay. People do not work for free. They work for a salary. Okay. Either a yearly salary or an hourly salary, but they work for money. Okay. I doubt that not many of you guys, unless you have some passion, would work for free. Is that correct? At least I hope. Many of you guys simply, do not want to work for nothing. You guys are here, spending your time with me, and of course, spending the time at Centennial College to achieve something greater, something big. So your activities, you want to identify activities and plan the process that are assigned to them, the people, department, and eventually the team that's willing to work on the area thereof. So a lot of times, what's going to happen is that when you look at departmentalization, a lot of times a lot of activities are identified in the planning process and assigned to people in your department. So a lot of times what we call this the allocation of resources, where you want to look at the allocation, and you want to make sure that the right people are in the right departments, planning, processing, assigning them to the right department, and making sure that they work all together. Now, the thing is that when you look at structuralization, there comes a cost. Okay, so when you have, five, six managers on top of you, every manager in the hierarchy gets paid more. Okay, so the question now is that if you have, let's say, an in between manager, so you have a top level manager, you have a junior manager, and then you have a mid sized manager. The question now is, why do we need a mid level manager? Okay, and when you look at it, there has to be a purpose. And a lot of times when HR, which we looked at in last week, when they start to divide the organization, they have to make sure that the company, the organization, has a purpose. Okay, they have a purpose, a need, and they have to make sure that the need is going to be given. All right. So a lot of times when you look at the activities in the planning process as they're assigned to the people in the department, the goal here is that you want to have levels of management and making sure the managers are organized in different levels. Okay, you want to make sure that as you move up the pyramid management, positions get more of a demand, but they carry more authority and responsibility. Okay. So when you look at the three levels of management, I mentioned that there's three levels. You have the top managers, you have the middle managers, and then you have the first line managers. When you look at the top managers are the high executives, the C level, workers in your company. They usually have something with a C in their title. So they may be a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, CTO, Chief Technological Officer, CFO, Chief Financial Officer, or CMO, all right, Chief Management Officer. You also deal with a COO, okay? Anyone heard about a COO before? C dot O as in orange dot O as in orange. CO is, oh, here. And we have one person saying it is. Yes. Okay. I assume yes, you know what it is, or yes, you can explain it to us. But COO is Chief Operational. Okay, the person with the operations. So everybody with a C level suite, we call it, they're usually on top. Okay, they set the objective, they scan the horizons, they want to see that the company is healthy, they plan and make decisions accordingly, and they make sure that the company is going to be run properly, okay, without any problems, any issues, or any circumstance. That's correct, Nassim. So now let's, of course, when you look at middle managers, they work with top managers and they are given a resource. And sometimes middle managers are required to do a budget. So let's say you have, a CMO, which is Chief Marketing Officer, and then you have a Director of Sales, and Director of Sales is now the middle manager. They are going to be given by the CMO X amount of money, let's say $3 million, and their goal is to use the $3 million accordingly within a year and to make sure that you can get results. Okay, so if you're doing sales and I'm investing in you $3 million, okay, you're going to take that money and you're going to use it for financing your brochures, financing your marketing objectives, hiring people, okay, and making sure that you as a director and you with your team can give me a return on my investment. Okay. And most of the time, the return on the investment, theoretically, in business, is that you give me a dollar back. Okay. As long as there's a dollar, you basically took $3 million and you generate $3 million as well. But that doesn't make any business sense because then, of course, you have to share the dollar, and of course, dollars are and cents. We need more than that. So, in most cases, when a top manager gives a middle manager resources, in this case, budget, their goal is that they want to either double it, triple it, quadruple it. Okay, so again, coming back to $3 million a year in budget, you're going to spend that money and you're going to hire, for example, workers. Okay, so you're going to have a team maybe below you that will be hired. So first line managers will be your supervisors. They will coordinate with you. And the goal here is that you want to make sure that you can allocate the right resources. Okay, so in this case, maybe a good million and a half dollars will go to hiring the right people. Okay. So you pay maybe first line manager a little bit more, but then the sales reps down below, they are going to be the movers and shakers. Okay. So the goal is survival. And if you hire, again, let's say, and I'm just pointing out a number here, 10 people at, I'm going to assume 100,000. You're looking at a million, and then you hire for the ratio to make better sense of it. For every three or four or five people, you need another manager, and that manager gets paid maybe 200,000, and you bump it up to about half a mil. So a $500,000 goes to your production, and then the other one goes into setting up events, buying for your clients, doing a lot more. Okay, but regardless, okay, $3 million doesn't come and go. So the goal here for the top middle manager is to make sure that money can double or at least triple or quadruple. What am I talking about? Doubling, quadrupling? Well, if you're giving me $3 million, I want to at least see 20 million. I want to see maybe $18 million return back to the company. Okay. So that means, of course, that your department generates $15 million. Okay. And definitely you as a director will succeed in business sales. So the goal for middle managers is that they're given an objective by top level managers. They're going to oversee the first line managers, which are the managers on sales, and report back to top management on how well they do. Okay. Again, the goal, as I mentioned, I'll give you 3 million. The goal is you give me $18 million back so that your department can be $50 million profitable. Okay. So the goal here for middle managers, directors, is to develop an implementation activity to make sure that this goal can be met. So I will give this goal on April of this year, and then we're going to revisit that goal in April of next year and ask, are you making that money? If you are making that money, awesome, fantastic. You're doing really, really great. Okay. And then definitely you will use that as a first line manager to coordinate activities, supervise the employees as a first line manager, make sure you can report back to middle managers how well your ratio of 5 to 1 has been working, and then definitely involve the day-to-day operation and make sure that you could succeed here. Okay. So what we have seen here is that this is a pyramid. Okay. This is a pyramid where as you move up the pyramid, your goal is you want to be a top manager one day. Manager positions get more and more demanding, but they carry more 40. Okay. More 40, more responsibility, along with power, prestige, and even pay. Okay. So again, your goal as top managers is that whatever profit you make, if it's a revenue, you can keep at least half of it because you run the company. Okay, middle managers might get a really big bonus and then benefits, and then maybe first line managers might just get bonus salary at the end of the season. So top managers spend the most of their time planning and making the decisions, while the first line managers down below they focus on the day-to-day operations, and of course, for obvious reasons, there are far more people with positions at the base. As you can see, the base is pretty big. We may have 200 workers working down below. And of course, the first line managers have to make sure that they're doing a good job. And of course, when you get to mid-level managers, middle managers, their goal is all about the organization and the layers. And of course, top managers occupy the peak. First line managers, they're very broad and you have quite a lot of them. Okay, so for every 5 workers, you need a manager, and that's the goal of a company. And again, every company is different. It may be for every 50 workers, you have one main manager. Who knows? Okay, depends how big the company is. But middle managers, they are focusing on first line managers. And again, as you move up the pyramid, manager positions get more and more demanding, more 40, more responsibility, and more risk. Okay, so a lot of times, when we always ask, why are we not doing a good job? There's a lot of reasons here. Okay, and maybe middle managers might get a lot more in debt or a lot more in problems, but top level managers and executives, their goal is to scan the external environments for opportunities and threats, and they also redirect the company efforts when needed. Okay. So let's look at top managers for a second. Top managers, as we saw, they are responsible for the welfare of the company and the performance of the company. They set objectives of the performance. They look at targets and they say to ourselves, well, if I'm spending $3 million for sales, the goal is I want to triple it. I want, $24 million. Okay, maybe it's a little bit too much. Okay, we had, when you look at it, the company on average has to make about, somewhere in the range of $2 million per month. Okay, and some months might be good, some months might be bad. We don't know. Okay, and we definitely have to understand that in every game, life is a game. Life is full of tricks. Okay, and a lot of times when you look at top level executives, they routinely scan the outside environment and see to themselves what is changing, what is happening, what can we do to make our company more profitable, and they redirect the company efforts when needed. They spend a considerable amount of time and portion of their time planning, making the decisions. They represent the company objectives, which is very important in dealing with other business environments and dealings with governments and agencies, and they promote the public job at the top level and typically include things like the chief executive officer, CEO, chief financial officer, CFO, or the COO. Okay. Sometimes they don't have a C-level title. Sometimes they may also be called a president, a vice president, senior vice president. Okay. So beyond that, it's a hierarchy that you have. And the goal here is that based on a hierarchy, you have more seniority. And because you have more seniority, you can measure performance objectives, create a mission statement, a vision of where the company is today, tomorrow, 5, 10, 15 years to the future, and then design all the direct activities that must be performed if the organization is going to fulfill its mission. Okay. So you set up mission when you started, and the goal is that after you're gonna be in that position, the goal is that you want to make sure that you will succeed as need be. Okay. So again, common job titles that you may have also in mid-level management is that mid-level management, as I mentioned, they're responsible for developing and implementing the activities. Okay, these mid-level managers are given a task by top levels that this is our mission, this is where we want to be, this is where we want to go. Take us there. Okay, so your goal is that you have responsibilities, you have objectives, and now you have to take the objective and go elsewhere. So I mentioned about the hierarchy of a company, and in some cases, a company can also be an organization that has different regions. Okay, so when you look at Canada, for example, the most easiest way you can break apart Canada is in freeways. And that's in my opinion. Again, I've been in a company in Canada that broke their division apart in about 40, 50 different parts, and it was more complex. But our, especially when you start in a new company, usually every province in Canada will have a manager, a mid-level manager. Okay, so we call that manager, let's call him a provincial manager or a regional manager. Okay, so we have 10 provinces, or three territories. And what happens a lot of times is that you have, for example, a mid-level manager in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick. And then you have in Quebec, all right. Then another one in Ontario, and keyword Ontario. We'll talk about Ontario, how big it is. Then you have one in Manitoba. You have one in Saskatchewan. You have one in Alberta. You have another one in BC. And what can happen here is that because we have also business up north, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, maybe the Manitoba manager, the Saskatchewan manager, and also the Alberta manager might be working up north. Okay, and maybe every month they will go up north and see some clients. Okay, just as an option. But I mentioned to you guys that it's not that easy to break apart provinces as well. We have 10 provinces, and even now, breaking apart territories is complex. It's so big out there in the territories of Canada, but the problem is that we don't have much business out there. Okay, we have absolutely no form of business, and what happens a lot of times is that we normally deal with businesses that are not that I wouldn't say profitable, but they're not that easily accessible. All right, so you know, a big territory, but not a lot of people living there. Okay, so you're looking at less than 500,000 people living in such a huge amount of space. Okay, but if it's based on space, okay, what happens a lot is that Ontario and Quebec, they're our most heavily populated area. And even when you break apart Ontario, you can have regional managers in different locations, okay? Because most of the population of Ontario is between Windsor, Ontario, which is the start of Ontario, and all the way into Ottawa. Most of our population, like 13, 14 million people, they live in that corridor. Okay. We call it the 401 corridor from east to west. You have so much communities out there, from Windsor to London, Sarnia. You have, of course, Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, Toronto, which has like easily 7 million people. Then all the smaller regions around Ontario, Toronto. Kingston has a good 250,000 people. Ottawa has 1 million people, and so forth. And then anywhere north of us, okay, so North Bay, Thunder Bay, Sudbury, Petawawa, Northern Ontario has like 1 million people. Okay, hardly anybody. So you may have one manager up there, and then like 7 managers down below. You never know. Okay. Another option to have if you're working in a mid-sized company. So again, please remember how we defined a mid-sized company previously. If you work in a mid-sized company, you may be able to structure it a little differently. Two options. Maybe you have an East Coast manager that will manage, instead of the provinces, different multiple provinces at once. So you have one person based, let's say, in Quebec. They will cover, most of Quebec, and then the other locations. So Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, and of course Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick. So they have about five, six, seven major provinces that they cover all at one time. Then you'll have maybe another person, maybe covering Northern Ontario, covering Manitoba, Alberta, sorry, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and most of Alberta, maybe from the East Coast, and now, sorry, the east part of Alberta. Not many people live there. And then you have another manager covering the most populated areas of Alberta, and then BC. Okay, that's an option. Okay. So, I mean, when you look at it, there's not much work for the person living in central Canada, but in this particular case, they do a lot of driving. Okay. So maybe they work 4 days within a week abroad. So they're traveling from, Tuesday to Friday or Monday to Thursday, but they're constantly on road versus somebody in Ontario or wherever it is that normally they do not leave their office as frequent as somebody in central Canada. Then another option might be that you have one major middle manager, or another option is that you may split the country into two. So maybe you split the country, maybe in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where a good part of your management is in one side, another management another side, and that might be a good option. Okay, and where you split it again, it's like splitting a cake. You can split it in Manitoba, you can split it in Saskatchewan. I recommend Manitoba because, again, when I mentioned to you guys, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nunavut, Yukon, Northwest Territories, all these locations, they have altogether less than about 5 million Canadians. Okay, not a lot of people live there, so definitely the option is open for you guys. Okay, so again, please remember, guys, middle level management is responsible for developing and implementing activities, responsible for allocating the resources needed to achieve the objective by top level management. So basically, a lot of times, middle level manager, they would usually, especially in a technological company, a financial company, they understand the ins and outs about the company, which may be something that you as a worker may be lacking, which is not a problem. Don't worry about it. But it will give you a certain appeal that in top middle level management, you would have somebody who will convert the technicalities of your company on how to get a profit, and we'll be converting it back to explain to you how to do so. Okay, how to make sure that you can do it in the best way possible. So again, some common job titles that a middle level manager has. They can be an operation manager. They can be a divisional manager, a plant manager, a branch manager. They can do quite a lot of things, but those titles do not have senior positions, or possibly also do not have, a position where it's vice president or C level. So definitely make sure you understand who's a middle level manager. And then, of course, we have the frontline managers. Frontline managers, they may be something down your alley. They are supervisors. They supervise the employees. Usually, it's in a ratio or number. So for every first line manager, you have like one, you have 5 to 6, maybe 10 people that they report to. Okay, so you may have a micro budget on hand. Maybe it's a budget that you have to respect and do. You may have minimal responsibilities going on, but you will supervise the employees and coordinate employee activities as need be. So the goal here is to ensure that work is consistent with the plans, and first line managers, they supervise the employees and coordinate their activities to make sure that work performed throughout the company is consistent with the plans of both the top level, C-level executives, and middle management as well. It's at the level that most people acquire their first management experience. So again, unfortunately, guys, it depends on the company. You cannot just go up the scale here, okay? Unless your parents work in the position, definitely there might be nepotism going on. Again, every company is different, but the job titles vary considerably. And when you are a first line manager, you get designation as a manager, maybe a group leader, a supervisor, maybe a foreman in a union, office manager. Those type of titles, they are the titles that are around you. Okay. And again, like I mentioned, first line managers, they have responsibilities, but they're very limited. Okay. They're still heavily controlled by top level management, and the middle level management will oversee them. So again, when you are a first line manager, the ratio here is that you have, let's say, 10 workers, sales reps, to one sales manager. Okay. And you're one sales manager. And like we mentioned, the company can be that you have regional managers, and then you have district managers. And the district managers, they deal with the account representatives that are the first go-to people. Okay, so the ratio here is that you have 10 to 1 first line managers to regular workers, and then if you have first line managers, the ratio for mid-level managers is that you have, for every one mid-level manager, you have maybe between 3 to about 6 different first line managers that will report to them. Okay, so as you can see, the hierarchy in a company changes. You basically are organizing your company so that you know exactly who to deal with. Okay, especially when we deal with sales, we want to make sure that the territory is going to be even. It's going to be fair. It's going to be easy to attach. And the goal here is that you want to make sure that those goals are going to be in place on what you may be looking at in the future. Okay, guys. All right. So we covered a good portion of the first half of the class. Does anyone have any questions about first, second, third, or first line, mid-level, top-level management at this point? Any questions?
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah. Well, Nassim, one second.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay.
Let me just see. Hold on 1 second. I can see that you're moving the thing. Hold on. Go. Can you talk again for a second? Hello?
Yes,
One
Professor.
second. Hold
Can I
on. Let me
ask a
just.
question?
Test, test. Nassim, you can hear me?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, but I
I
cannot
can hear
hear
you.
you. Hold on. Let me just check one more thing here. System. What about now?
Can you hear
Okay.
me,
Hold on
Professor,
one
right
second.
now?
Hold on. Let me just check one last thing here.
Can you hear me right now?
Wait 1 second. Testing.
Hello.
Testing. Hold on. Ay, ay, ay. Test. 1 second. Hold on. Hold on. Hello?
Professor, can you hear me?
Got you. Okay, finally. Hi, Nassim.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Regarding regional manager, can we just count regional manager as a mid-size level managers?
Yeah. So as I mentioned to you, it depends on how big the company is. You may have a regional manager that may be a first line manager, or a regional manager that will be either a second in the command manager. Okay. Again, every company is different. So it depends on how they're structured. It can all be different. I worked in a company before where we had first line managers, and every state in the Americas, they had a manager. So America, United States had 50 managers, and every manager was different. But the problem is that we had 50 managers, but in some places they had a manager managing multiple states, right? Because the
Yeah.
states are very small. So you had, for example, one in Puerto Rico because the distance is very far. But
Yes.
California was huge. Okay, you have 40 million people living in California. So you have many managers all together. And then when you look at Central America, Central United States, you have maybe a couple different locations like Wyoming, Idaho, North Dakota, Montana. These places are very rural. Okay, these places have
Yeah.
hardly anybody, so you have maybe one manager. And then here's where the problem began, and it happened in California and also in Ohio. Um, you have, because of our industry, you have more business in Ohio but less population. So what happened is that in a certain point in Ohio, you cut Ohio in half. So eastern part of Ohio, based on the territory, belongs to one manager. The West belongs to another manager. So it all becomes different. But in most cases, a regional manager or even a district manager might assume mid-level.
Okay, and regarding Canada, can we just for the managers who just manage the states, can we just count them as mid-level managers?
Yeah, so if you have a small company and you don't have much business in Canada, you can definitely allocate some of the work to the Americans. Okay. So it again all
Yeah.
depends on how much business you have in Canada and what kind of structure you decide to do on. So in most cases, you have those situations, and you definitely have to discuss how the breakdown is going to be with your team and your organization. But again, every department, every company is different. It all depends on the industry, the size of the company, and how HR and management wants to structure themselves.
And the other question I have, do we have any specific ratio regarding mid-size level manager to first line managers?
No, again, it depends on how big the company is. And the thing is that every company, as they grow, they then sit down and reposition it. So you may have a situation where because you are in the GTA and you are now a regional manager in the GTA, you're going to deal with so many first line managers versus down in, Manitoba, that might be different because the space is going to be different. So
Yeah.
there's no given numbers here. Okay, everything could be off because as the company grows, they're going to reposition it all the time. So there's different situations that change managers will give you options, but nothing is written down in the company. Everything is like open and up in the air. You may have a situation where you have a first line manager and a ratio of another manager because the company is very small. But as the company grows, you promote the first line manager and then reposition it differently.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. It's clear for me now.
Oh, no, no, no worries, anytime. All right. Any other questions? Anything else I can add here? Add here, take away, some, put in together. Nope. All right. All right. So the timer now is 1:15. Let's take a break. And when we're back, what I'll do is we'll talk more about structure. I'll give you guys some time to talk about how the companies get it done. But definitely we'll talk more about the structure and the next few weeks and what we may be interested in doing. Okay. So let's take a break and we shall be back in 10 minutes. So 10 minutes, of course. Please be back at 1:25. Okay. I'll see you guys here very, very shortly. I'll just write down here. Please be back at 1:25 p.m. See you soon. I wrote it twice just to make ends of it. Okay. So let me put that in and we are good to go. All right, perfect. All right, have a good one, and I'll see you guys very shortly. 1:25. Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you guys had a good break and things went up your alley. I want to talk more about the organizational structure, how a company makes it. Naseem had a really good question. I just want to bring back again. She asked about the ratios that I gave, different positions you had, especially in first level managers, mid level managers, and so forth. And to be honest, and as we established, there's really no criteria here. Okay, every company is different and every company is functioning differently as well. Okay, especially when you're a new company, they have a different functionality versus another company like maybe a bank. Again, many of you guys might be interested to work in the banking sector right after school. Their structure is completely different. Okay, you have literally a company like RBC that's from coast to coast, and I think easily every major province has at least 1,000 to even about 4 or 5,000 workers working in that position. So you can clearly imagine how big these organizations might be. But now let's, of course, when you look at organizational structures, many companies have to get the job done, and the goal here is that they want to make sure that there's not going to be too many workers in a position that doesn't need too many individuals. Okay, and many individuals, of course, maybe in sales, maybe in different departments, you may not need them. Okay, so you want to find first and foremost the need. You want to look at specialization. You want to make sure that you have the right people. Okay, that nobody steps on each other's toes or feet. And then, of course, you create departmentalization. And in many companies, the most generic way to create departmentalization is to break apart marketing. And then, if marketing is in sales, break apart marketing and sales differently or together. It's your call. Then, of course, you need finance and accounting, or do you need finance in one side, accounting the other? How big is this organization of yours? Then, of course, you need operations. You may need supply chain, HR. You may need, of course, engineering, research and development, scientists, whatever it is, you need a department. And as you saw here, depending on the industry, depending on the company itself, every company is different. Every company is structured differently. And of course, you specialize the grouping within the meaningful units and how the jobs are specialized in. So again, every department might be different. Every department is specialized, okay? And even now in Canada, what you would have is you may have a department, but then you may have a department that has another smaller department that only works with, say, French Canadians. Okay, so because they speak the language, French Canadian language, they have their own department. Okay, and they function quite differently. So where I'm getting at is that for many organizations, their goal is that they want to look at departmentalization, and by departmentalization, they want to group it, especially how they can be competitive and how they can break apart different divisions, so that I would not do the same exact position all the time. Departments will be treated differently, and of course, the way that you break apart departments in two different forms is that you have the functional department, a hierarchy, or divisional departments, that in different divisions you come together and you talk to one major unit. Okay, where in functional you have a hierarchy, and not in functional departments. In an organization, that's where you build the triangle. Okay, where you have many people in the bottom and people in the top are basically only a handful. So how you build it, how you make it, how you construct it is all down to the company. And again, building an organizational structure engages managers in two activities: figuring out what job specialties we need, dividing a task into jobs and departments, and then the departmentalization is grouping jobs into the units. Okay, making sure that a company structure outlines the various roles within a company, which positions report to which, and how organizations will departmentalize its work, making sure that they have criterias, they have needs. So think about it like a body. Okay, when you look at a human body, in order for me to function as a regular healthy human being, I need the heart. That's a department. I need the brain. I need the eyes, and the brain, the eyes, maybe one department. Maybe the whole head has a division. Maybe my torso has, of course, other different divisions, and then maybe my limbs, they will be in one different position as well. But you, when you combine it together, you have a human being. Okay, and again, there are situations where not everybody has the same, human being need, and of course maybe they're born with something else, but nonetheless, of course, every company is the same way. They're born differently. Okay, so they take note definitely when a company structure is a range of a position that the most appropriate of your company specification point in time, and of course because of changing environments, maybe because the department that you had is not utilized anymore. Maybe they're going to outsource the department in the business operation. A structure that works today might unfortunately not work in the future. Okay, maybe we're going to have a department instead of research and development. We're going to have a big data department. Okay, and the data department, that's where your change might be at instead of having management of marketing deal with it. So that's what you hear often, so often about companies doing something called restructuring. A lot of times, I mentioned to you that there are consultants on change management, and they come in and restructure the company. They see that the company has too many workers, too less workers. They want to change things around and make things a little bit easy, comforting, and much better. So by altering existing organizational structure to become more competitive, once conditions have changed, we have to look how the process of specialization and departmentalization are accomplished. A lot of times, maybe many organizational organizing activities can be broken down into clusters of related tasks that can be handled by individual groups, and those groups, of course, are called specialization. Definitely, when designing a organizational structure, there's twofold dimension. Number one, you want to identify the activities that need to be performed in order to achieve organizational goals. And then, of course, you also want to break down the activities into tasks, okay? Making sure that every day when somebody comes to work, they know exactly what they need to do, how they need to do it, and what they need to do for performance to be done with individuals on your own and groups of employees all together, okay? So the advantage here in specialization is that there is some benefits on specialization of a position. First and foremost, it does lead a lot of times to efficiency. You want to be as productive and as efficient as possible. Imagine a situation, of course, which department was responsible for paying its own invoices. A person handling this function may have a few times a week, would be likely far less efficient than someone whose job is to manage your bills. Okay, like accounting, they will handle your bills. So you give them all the costs associated with doing business, and they will increase efficiency for you. So that you only focus on what you do best. In addition to increasing efficiency, guys, specialization results in jobs that are easier to learn and roles that are clearer to employees. But the approach that has disadvantages as well. Like I mentioned, some companies are so big that unfortunately a lot of people do not know what they're doing. Okay, a lot of companies are saying, "Well, I understand the process. I just don't understand after we give it to another department what they do with it." Okay, and that could be a problem. So doing the same thing over and over again in redundancy sometimes lead to boredom in a company. And unfortunately, when a worker does not get excited coming to work, they would do what we call employee turnover. They leave. And a lot of disgruntled, dissatisfied employees will, move to another company. So before long, companies may notice decreased performance, meaning that people are not motivated anymore. There's less management and increased people of being absent, being called sick for work, and unfortunately, they will resign from their position. So a lot of times when we structure a organization, we want to look at the percentage of workers who leave an organization and how much they have to be replaced. And as I mentioned, traditional grouping of jobs resulting in different organizational structures happen. And for the sake of simplicity, the two major types of functions on types of a company can be is a functional company hierarchy, and divisional, where you have different divisions, and then one major center of management that everybody will go and work with. Okay. So when we look at functional organizations, okay, functional organizations are organizations where a functional membership, people with comparable skills and performance, will have similar tasks. Okay. So structure is simple to understand and enable staff to specialize in particular areas. So you have a specialized staff in finance, a specialized staff in HR, a specialized staff in sales and marketing and so forth. And they will staff specialized particular areas. And of course, the only problem that we see here is communication. Bad communication and decision making between units can be a problem. And sometimes you have to have one single vehicle to relay the message. Emails, and unfortunately, some people are not the best in emails, and nonetheless, you have one vehicle of communication. So you may bring in an ERP system, and the ERP system can help you along the way. So again, a functional organization groups together people who have comparable skills and perform similar tasks. This form of organization, which you call functional organizations, is fairly typical for now small or medium-sized companies, which group their people by businesses. Okay, they group them by departments, and the more departments they have, the better. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, accountants are grouped together. Depends on how big or small the company is with finance. So a lot of times people doing math and crunching numbers, they also do finance on the side. Operation, marketing, and sales can be one target. And then sometimes human resource production and research can be another, okay? Or you can merge them all together, depends on how you see the company. Each unit, of course, in our company is headed by an individual member. That will be the functional manager, and the functional manager is mid-level manager. And each unit is headed by an individual with expertise in a unit's particular function. Okay, so there may be a functional manager and then a unit line manager that specializes in what we are doing. Okay, or can be both. Again, every company is different. So there are a number of advantages and disadvantages to the functional approach. The advantage is the structure is simple to understand and enables people working below you to specialize in particular areas. So again, in accounting, you have accounts payable, accounts receivable. Very simple. One person pays the rent, pays the bills. Another person accepts the bills, and then you balance them together, and then you say, well, accounts payable means that I owe people money was higher than accounts receivable, receiving money. So I have to ask for more money from our suppliers, vendors, and so forth. So the structure is simple. Everyone in the marketing group, especially, would have similar interests and expertise. So again, when you look at marketing, most of the time, marketing could be sales marketing, could be advertising marketing, could be strategic marketing, but they all do the same thing. They increase sales of our goods. When you look at homogeneity, it also has drawbacks. It can hinder communications and decision making between units, and even promote sometimes interdepartmental conflicts where HR doesn't get along with accounting doesn't really work with finance has a problem with sales cannot align themselves with operation, and then you have people butting heads. Okay, so for a lot of times when heads are being bumped with, let's say, accounting department, because marketers want to spend much money as possible on advertising, accounts want control of costs, and a lot of times there will be a conflict. Okay, so the conflict happens because, of course, we may not agree on a lot of things, but for many large companies, often they find it unruly to operate as large as one large unit, and they want to create a functional organization. Okay, so what they do a lot of times in a functional organization is that there is something that many large companies do, that they look at divisions. Okay, they can actually break apart their company based on the product that they sell. Okay, so maybe we have different lines of product, and maybe we have menswear, we have women's wear, we have children wear. They're broken apart. For example, Zara has men, women, and children, but then they have another department for like homes. Okay. So you may be working in the home department. Okay. And the home department is different because you have different customers. You may have a different process. Okay. Many companies, they have what we call brick and mortars. Have you heard about the process brick and mortar? A mortar shell, brick, bricks on top of the wall. Cool. All right. So a lot of times you call brick and mortars. We call it the stores. So when you go to a store, for example, that's a brick and mortar. All right. You go there, you see it. They have bricks. They have a place. They have a tangible place. Then you have click and mortars. So not a brick, but on a mouse you have a click. And a click and mortars is basically a website. So a lot of times, many companies like Zara, they would have a location where you can actually go and purchase the items. Okay, so you go to Zara, and under Zara, you have a location there where you can do online sales. So you don't work directly with the stores. Okay. So the process is different and maybe geographically. Okay. So again, there are companies, and again, we talked about, the Canadian company. So you have a Canadian satellite office. The satellite is small, but because it's so small, you may be connected to another department or another region. So I've been in a company before where our company was connected to all the Americas. Every major every major country in the Western Hemisphere, they were aligned to us. Okay, so what that meant, of course, that everybody from Argentina all the way to Canada were in one geographical unit. And then Asia and Australia was one unit. Africa, Europe was another unit. Okay, so basically we had like 3, 4 units in our company. Okay, and our company was based on geographics. Okay, geographics can be maybe in the same language. So there are many countries that share a similar language. So, for example, speaking countries. Spanish speaking countries, of course, are mostly the South American countries, but also Spain. And then, of course, you have Portuguese, where it's Portugal, Brazil, and possibly Macau. And of course, you also deal with English speaking countries. Okay. So English speaking countries could be, of course, England, could be, of course, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and beyond. Okay. So you can break it apart in different ways. And again, how you break it apart can be different. But of course, the sheer size of a company does make it difficult for managers to oversee operations and serve customers. Okay. Each divisional functional manager relatively works autonomously because it contains most of the functional expertise. So a lot of times you have production department, marketing department, accounting, finance, human resources that needs to meet its objective and challenges and find the most appropriate way to structure operations to achieve overall company goals. Towards this end, definitely divisions can be formed according to, as I mentioned, products to the customers. Maybe you have customers who are we call them B2B, business to business or business to customers. You have different managers as well. Sometimes you have account managers that are national account managers that work with major companies, and then you have smaller ones that work with the smaller guys. Okay. Different divisions can be formed according to what is needed. And of course, when you look at product division means that a company is structured according to its product lines. So look at General Motors, for example. General Motors has the Buick brand, the Cadillac brand, Chevrolet brand, GMC brand. They're all in one different locations. Some companies also are customers, like I mentioned. They prefer divisions and structures based on the enablement of their service to their various categories. So again, Johnson has a customer division for pharmaceuticals, a division for babies, and different customers and different needs. As I mentioned, there's also a process. If goods move through several types of steps in their production, a company might opt for process division structure. This forms well at maybe municipal items or something very similar. And of course, geographical, like I mentioned, division that enables companies that operate in several locations to be responsive at local level. So again, Adidas every single country Adidas works on in, they do have a specific regional manager, and that regional manager can be big, can be small. It all depends. Okay. So another important part is that you have to chart all these items together. Organizational chart is a diagram that shows you how to delineate, how to organize inter-organizational positions, and make sure that everybody reports to somebody. Okay, not leaving somebody behind. Okay, doing a head count, making sure that over time companies can revise their organizational structure to accommodate growth changes in its external environment. And a lot of times it is uncommon, for example, for a company to adopt functional structures in the early years, and then as it becomes bigger, and that's a question that Nassim brought up, as a company becomes bigger, more complex, more challenging, it might be more of a divisional structure. So you may have one structure in the beginning of the company when the company was organized, and then to accommodate new products or to become more responsive to market changes, to certain customers or geographical areas, you may accommodate it somewhere else. So that may mean, for example, we have offices, and sometimes you may hear an office called MENA. MENA office is relatively new, and there's a lot of reasons why the MENA office is really successful. MENA stands for Middle East, North Africa, and it's considered regional. And there's a lot of traits that combine regional, the region itself. So a lot of times, MENA office can have two options. You may have a main office in London, but the MENA office is still in the London office, but will work accordingly with MENA. And what does MENA stand for? Middle East, North Africa. Okay. So in the Middle East, North Africa, you have very much common languages. Different countries, common language. In the Arab world, for example, you have about 22 um, countries that are Arab speaking. Okay. There's different dialect of Arabic. There's different mentalities there, but all at the same time they speak and write the same language. Okay, and then when you break it up a little bit more, MENA can also serve countries that are predominantly Muslim. Okay, so a lot of them have commonality in the diet. If you're selling food or something specific, they also have a commonality. So when you break apart MENA, there's a lot of commonalities that go about. And of course, with MENA, a lot of times one of the locations that MENA succeeds in is actually establish an office in Dubai. Okay, why Dubai? Well, Dubai is in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere, but very close to many major MENA countries. Okay, so for example, if you're trying to travel or you're trying to be a rep in different countries in the Middle East, being close to Dubai means you're in neutral territory. Okay. So that means, of course, from Pakistan, which is predominantly Muslim, doesn't speak, for example, Arabic, but it speaks, of course, Urdu and a Pashto. Of course, you have somebody dealing with it. And of course, I mentioned Urdu, Pashto, non-Arabic languages, but it is connected, of course, to Afghanistan and does create different dialects, okay, if you're dealing with that market, okay? And again, when you break apart Arabic, you have Farsi, which is, mostly in Persia, but Farsi might be connected to a couple of the languages in a stance, for example, okay? Possibly Azerbaijan, which is kind of Turkish, or possibly a Uzbekistanian dialect regional language. So again, the way that you can break it apart is based on language, possibly religion, commonality, cultures, whatever you would like. But then again, the organization can be broken. And as I mentioned, the option is you can have an office, MENA office in London, which of course London, not that far from the Middle East, but you still have an office that is in synchronization to your main office, or possibly you go to Dubai and you structure it as you would want. But again, the organizational chart is a chart that puts things all together in different perspectives. Persian, yes, Farsi. And of course, Farsi is I wouldn't say they're the same dialect as Arabic, but has similarities nonetheless. The writing is a bit similar. You can see the difference in the vowels. But in the case of the Persian, you may have different dialects that may be connected, or somebody that may speak, say, Farsi and also Arabic, along with some couple of different languages. Okay, so this gives you an advantage. Okay, this gives you an advantage. And now, question is how your company is structured, how many sales you have, how much frequency. All these questions are where, mid-level, top-level managers have to decide and, come together and say to themselves, do we need an office in Dubai, or can we hire somebody who is Farsi, Arabic, Turkish speaking individual, and can they operate their own office, and now they're in a new structure, in, say, Dubai. Okay, so again, different tones, different dialects. It all depends, and as I mentioned, a lot of times the way that many companies do their organizational charts, and we'll talk about it in uh, I would say, Wednesday, that a lot of times they do it holistically. They do it as, the chemistry of a company, as the chemicals of the company grows. Okay, like a tree. We have to adjust the tree. Okay, and like any tree that you have outside in your lawn, you have to cut it. You have to cut it a little bit, trim the branches, make it nicer, make it more eventful, and definitely bring it all together. Okay, so every company is going to be different. Every structure is going to be different. And a lot of times, my take here is, if you take something away from our class, which is ironically from the key takeaways here, I would say that every company is different. So, as I mentioned to you, there's no set agenda here. There's no set rules. Again, let's assume, for example, that you're going to be hired in a company. The company has like 10 people. Okay, or even better. Okay, company has 3 people, meaning that it's, let's say, you, another worker, and the other worker is a bookkeeper, accountant. And a lot of times, what they have is, let's say, the husband is the owner, the wife is like operations, which is like co-owner, and then you have another person coming in, and then you're the third person. Okay, so the structure is going to be different. Okay, so it may mean that the third person may have a little bit of seniority over you, but the first and second individuals, husband and wife, will have more control. Okay, and then of course you're going to have situations where you may have 10 people now in a company, and then now you have, the 2 owners, and then people below them, and other people handling it all together. So maybe everybody in the company has a management position, but they're really managers. Okay, they're not really managers. Like I mentioned, when we call sales reps, a very fancy word to call a sales rep is a sales manager or an account manager, something very fancy. Okay, but every company is different, and every company is very, very unique as well. So a lot of times it all depends on the organization and what they do exactly. So when a company is, in research development versus finance and so forth, they're going to be different. Okay, and there are companies out there that, um, they either are too big and they have to get a diet, or they're too small and they realize, well, it's not worth it for me right now to hire an individual. All right, I would rather outsource it. Okay, so a good example of that is that, I know some of you guys are in, supply chain, and supply chain is very interesting because it depends on what kind of supply chain you do. If you do manufacturing supply chain, you may have a procurement manager, a purchasing manager, or even a purchasing department of different departments working in one, and then that might be aligned into supply chain. And then in supply chain, you have logistics, you have a warehouse manager, a transportation manager, and so forth. But some companies cannot afford that, because if you have a manager who specializes in so many different things, the problem is that you have a huge amount of bills and payments to pay that person. So you don't have that kind of resources. So what they do a lot of times is that they will hire somebody from another organization to do the work for them. Okay, so there are, and I'll give you the example from maybe my company, and this is just factual. I'm a one man show, but if I need support, if I need, help, in any departments, they will help me. Okay. So a lot of times, what occurs is that you have departments working together. Okay. And because I'm a one man show, I can only hire three people. Okay. So again, my company is a advisory consulting organization. And if I was to make, let's say, $300,000, okay, in order for me to make $300,000, I need to invest in my workers. Okay. But I cannot hire full time workers. Okay. So my company, it's a one man show. Okay. I did not expand. I keep things, I scale it very, very small, boutique. And I need three important people. One, I need the accountant. The accountant will crunch on my numbers. Okay. But I cannot hire a full time accountant because a full time accountant costs roughly about $150,000 or 200,000, and I cannot afford that. Another person they need is a lawyer, and that is called a counsel department in many companies. A lawyer normally would charge somewhere in the range of like, 250 or $500,000. Again, I don't have that money. Okay. So unfortunately, I cannot hire a full-time staff lawyer. And then the third person I need is a web designer. Okay. And the web designer charges $100,000 because they specialize in technology, and I cannot afford that as well. Okay. So when I break that apart and I use the individuals as I need, normally I use the accountant the most. The accountant will come and do my numbers every month, and usually they look at the balance to see if I'm profitable and how my company is expanding. So normally they would charge every year for 5 days per month of work. They charge me roughly about $20,000. Okay. And then the lawyer, because they do very technical work for me, I charge them $50,000. And then the last person, the web designer, I will charge them $10,000. Okay. So when you do the math, okay, 50 plus 20, that's 70, $80,000, or I'll push it up nicely to 100,000. I need for my ratio, in order for me to accumulate $300,000 for a one man show, I need to invest $100,000. Okay. So I take back 200,000, but I invest 100,000. Okay. So it means the ratio for 3 to 1. Okay. In order for me to make a dollar, okay, to invest in a dollar, it will accumulate $3 as well. Okay. And the reason why I do that is, of course, if I was to hire a full-time lawyer, that will be easily $250,000. To hire an accountant, 150,000. So we're going from 250, 150. That's like easily $400,000 easily. And then a full-time web designer, I would have to hire them for maybe 100,000. So you're easily hitting a $500,000. If my company only makes $300,000, 500,000 means that I would take in a loss at that point. Okay. And I don't want to take a loss. Okay. So I outsource people. Okay. And is it worth it for them? Okay. Well, and this is theoretical, if they all have 10 different clients, like myself, each if everyone had that, the web designer would make $100,000 working independently. The accountant will make $200,000, and then my lawyer would make a 500,000. Okay, so again, a lot of people do outsourcing, and outsourcing is a win-win for both organizations. Nathan says outsourcing may be more value for the money. Some companies offer those suite of services at more affordable rates. I agree. They do cost more, but as I mentioned, Nathan, I, instead of paying $500,000 for something that I cannot generate, I just pay 80 to $100,000, and they would generate the rest of the money for me. But doesn't mean that I just sit there and relax. It means that I still need, what I'm good at, and what I'm good at is, let's say, advisory, consulting, services. Okay. So I focus on what I do best, and everything else I give to other people. If I had to deal with legal, I'm not a lawyer by trade. It will take me forever. If I have to do my own numbers, it will be problematic. If I have to do my own web design, it will just sink into my hours per day. Okay, so instead of focusing on what I do best, I focus on that and then give it to other companies or organizations to help me out. And we all do that. We all do that. Okay, we all give some form of company um, you know, outsourcing to another company. Okay. And of course, the reason why we give that is because we do not run everything. Okay. So even, when you look at Centennial College, again, it's a not for profit, but there's so many things that we buy. They buy me the books. They buy me again, they use me as a service, so they charge me per hour. They also are needing me to be updated, so all my licenses and different designations, there's a cost to it. And even when we use Zoom, all right, Zoom is not made by Centennial College. It's made by another private company. That company takes a certain amount for licensing fees. Okay. So all in all, we make quite a lot of money, but nonetheless, we outsource some of the items that we cannot make. Okay. What do we specialize in? Our space. We specialize in the students, in our infrastructure, in our organization, and even in a company like Centennial, we are organized. Okay. So again, if I have a problem, for example, with one of you guys, looking you, I have somebody I can talk to. Okay. And in some companies, for example, you don't have that. You don't have that structure. So I don't know if I have problems with students, who to talk to. Okay. Or possibly a problem with my schedule, or possibly a problem with my payroll. Okay. Every single problem I have to talk to somebody else, which is not a problem, not a problem. But even that, in a company like Centennial, they also give me a option that I can actually go and speak to one person and they can redirect me. So they're kind of a line manager for us. Okay. So there is a line manager in the School of Business that they will help me in figuring out exactly who to talk to and what I need to do. All right, guys. Okay. Any further questions for me?
Excuse me, Professor. Can I ask you a question regarding the group assignments?
Yeah, that's what this time is meant for. Yeah.
Yeah. Regarding the instruction PowerPoint file, is it possible to have the PowerPoint file?
Is it possible to have the PowerPoint file?
Yeah. The instruction in the content of week 11
Yeah.
in video 2, you've mentioned the instructions for group assignments. And I believe that it was a PowerPoint file. Am I right or
That's
mistaken?
correct. So on the side, you're gonna present to me by just a document, not live in class. You're gonna show me a presentation. So I'm gonna look over the presentation, and you're gonna be marked as well on top of your document for Word on a presentation. But there's no presentation in class because you guys are both asynchronous and synchronous as well. So for those who are in 018, unfortunately, we cannot give you the time to present, so I'm only asking for a document.
Yeah, I got it, but maybe I have to change my question to that. Is there possible to have the instruction file maybe in Word or I don't know, PDF?
So you're looking for the instruction file, the file that gives the
Yeah.
instruction, and there is an instruction file in Word and PowerPoint. So under
Oh, I
week
couldn't
11,
find it.
it is available. If you go look in the submission where you submit
Yeah.
it, you will see it. It's available for you. Okay, and
For
that file
individual, yeah.
Nassim, that file is very, very similar, word for word, for what the PowerPoint did. All I did was present it to you guys. So if
Okay.
you look in submissions, you may see a Word document. If not, let me know and I'll send it to you. But make sure that you know where to find it.
Okay, sure. But I will just double check again. I
Yeah.
found the individual work assignment instruction in Word, but I couldn't find the group assignments instruction file. But I just will review it and will let you know.
Okay, please do because it is
Sure,
very, very similar, but it shows you Centennial on the top and it's a Word document. So
sure.
it should possibly be, of course, in the submission. Again, if not, I will add it, but just instruct me on it and let me know what you see, okay?
Sure, Professor. I will let you know via email.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
Hello,
Anybody else?
Professor.
Hello, Tisha.
Professor, actually, I want to know about group discussion, the discussion board.
So the discussion board, I told you if in our conversation when I presented to you, it is waived. So I gave you an Excel spreadsheet, and under Excel spreadsheet, you're in a group. Okay. So my take is that if your group members are communicating either through email, through Teams, through WhatsApp, or whatever channel you decide on, that will overwrite the document. Okay. So it means that once I see that there are participation, you get marked. Okay. So if you have somebody in your group that did not participate throughout those 3 weeks, because that particular discussion board is only good for like a week or so. So if in those 3 weeks, if you did not have somebody who spoke with you or did not engage in communication, then they do not get participation marks. Okay, so my take is that within these weeks that I presented to you the file in Excel spreadsheet, you communicated with the individuals and you spoke to them accordingly, and you found a medium to talk to.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. So if I see that there is proof there, everybody gets a mark. If I see that some students communicated, they will get partial marks. The students who did the work, and the others may be not getting the mark altogether. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome. All right. Anybody else? Any questions? Nope. All right. All right. So thank you guys. As always, it's been a pleasure. Mine as well. If you have any questions, I'll stick around till 2:30. If not, you can call it a day. And if you still have even more questions, okay, not a problem. We're gonna be talking again next half of our class, either Wednesday and Thursday. Stick around for that. I'm always happy camper having you guys here. And good luck. And I'll leave the rest of the session for you guys if you want to decide to speak with anybody in your group or speak to me. All right. It is open. Let me know.